A major lawsuit from Richard Simmons. He's taken on the tabloids, filing a 70-page suit against the National Enquirer and Radar Online for stories that claims that Simmons had gender reassignment surgery. Simmons calls the claims cruel and hurtful. ABC's Nick Watt is bringing us an exclusive interview with Simmons' attorney. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, George. Well, up until now, Richard Simmons has just calmly rebuffed all that frenzied speculation about what he's been up to these past 3 years, but no more. As you say, suing the National Enquirer and Radar Online for, he says, falsely reporting he's undergoing gender reassignment and living as a woman named Fiona.
One, take it out. 2, 3.
One of the most famous faces in America disappeared from public life 3 years ago, fodder for some wild theories, massive media coverage, and a chart-topping podcast. This morning, he's fighting back.
He's going to have to come back into public life to fight this.
There's a point where a human being says, I'm not going to allow this to happen anymore.
In 2016, the National Enquirer ran this cover story. Radar Online ran 5 pieces that same day. Both ran follow-ups even after Simmons publicly debunked the story. In their filing, Simmons' lawyers calling the coverage an egregious and hurtful campaign of defamation and privacy invasions, falsely asserting that Mr. Simmons is transitioning from a male to a female, including shocking sex surgery.
He's going to have to go and see an independent medical doctor and appear at a trial in front of strangers in the world. He's prepared to do that.
Last night, Simmons' manager telling us Richard and I are very pleased that his side of the story could be voiced through the filing. We look forward to getting the facts of the case before the public.
Keep that body moving. Come on, you can do this.
Sweating to the oldie stars, lawyers say both publications knew their single source was unreliable, and they claim the source was also blackmailing Simmons.
I think they felt in this particular case that Mr. Simmons didn't have the emotional and psychological wherewithal to stand up for himself. Richard has nothing to hide. He simply wanted to be a private individual, and we have to respect the right of privacy.
The Enquirer telling us our story was based on credible sources who were in Mr. Simmons' inner circle. We stand by our reporting about Mr. Simmons and intend to vigorously defend this lawsuit and win public vindication for our reports.
Is this damages, an apology, a retraction?
That all sounds excellent. Substantial damages and a really big apology.
So what is actually going on with Simmons? Well, his lawyers say he's taking time out of the spotlight. LAPD officers have visited twice, most recently in March, and they say there is no cause for concern. He's 68 years old. He's just living the quiet life, George, after 40 years in the spotlight.
Okay, Nick, interesting stuff. Thanks very much. Let's talk more about this now with our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. And we saw the lawyer right there, big lawsuit here, but it's not easy for a public figure like Simmons to win a case like this.
It never is. And the first question is going to be, is it false? It's hard to believe that Richard Simmons would be suing if he'd actually had the surgery. So let's assume for a minute, for argument's sake, that at least that part of the story may end up not being accurate. What AMI will say is, okay, even if that's the case, we had every reason to believe that the story was true, and that's the legal standard.
They weren't being reckless.
Exactly. When it comes to libel, is you have to be able to demonstrate that a media entity knew or should have known that it was false. But the really interesting legal question here is it defamatory to say that someone is getting this kind of surgery, that someone is changing their gender? Is it a negative thing? Is it worthy of damages? And that's a novel legal question that could be resolved in this case.
And finally, if it goes to a jury, he'd have to testify?
Absolutely. It's a civil case. It's not like a criminal case where you can say, I'm going to invoke my right not to testify. In a civil case, he's the plaintiff. He's going to have to testify.
Privacy issues there as well. Dan Abrams, thanks very much.